In a small village nestled in the heart of Umpa, lived two stepsisters named Uduak and Nneka. Uduak grew up in a small village in the constant maltreatment from Nneka's mother. Their father always tried to protect Uduak from the harsh words and actions of Mrs. Efioma, but he couldn't shield her from the pain and the cruelty that she endured. After their father passed away, Uduak was left orphan in the world. Uduak took responsibility of caring for Nneka despite the hardship that they faced. Mrs. Ifeoma's mistreatment only worsened as she saw Uduak as a burden rather than a blessing. She would shout at her at every turn, chase her down the village streets yelling, gossiping about her and calling her names. Uduak remained kind-hearted and loving, always putting Nneka's needs above her own. She worked hard to provide for them both, taking on odd jobs in the village to earn enough money for food and shelter. Nneka, on the other hand, grew bitter and resentful towards Uduak, blaming her for their misfortunes. Uduak was kind-hearted and generous, and always willing to help those in need. She spent her days tending to the sick and feeding the hungry and making sure everyone in the village was taken care of. Nneka, on the other hand, was selfish and arrogant and only cared about herself. She would often watch in envy as her stepsister received praise and admiration from the villagers for her selfless acts of kindness. One day, as Nneka watched Uduak help a young child who had fallen and scraped his knee, a wave of jealousy washed over her. She couldn't understand why everyone loved and admired her sister so much. In a fit of rage and envy, she thought she must make everyone like her more than they like Uduak. As time passed, the villagers began to lose more crops. It was a time of great sorrow and hardship. The land was plagued by a terrible famine that ravaged the crops, leaving the villagers destitute. The people prayed and pleaded for relief, but it seemed as though their cries fell on deaf ears. Uduak, known for her kindness and compassion, always willing to help those in need. Uduak had a heart of gold and a spirit that shone brighter than the sun. Uduak's stepsister Nneka, who was quite the opposite of her, was greedy and selfish, only caring about herself and how she could benefit from the misfortune of others. While Uduak spent her days helping the villagers and sharing what little she had, Nneka hoarded her supplies and turned a blind eye to the suffering around her. As the famine grew worse and the people grew weaker, Uduak could not stand to see her village in such despair. She knew that something had to be done to bring back prosperity and abundance to her village. And so, she set out on a journey to find a solution to the famine that plagued her village. Uduak traveled far and wide, seeking guidance and wisdom the knowledge of the land and its ways. She trekked through forests and crossed rivers, never losing faith in her mission. And finally, after many days of travel, Uduak came upon a wise old man who lived high at the tallest mountain in the land. The old man listened to Uduak's tale of woe and gave her a look in understanding. He told her of the sacred spring that lay deep within the heart of the forest, a spring that was said to hold the key to bringing back the abundance and wealth to the land. But the old man warned Uduak that the journey to the spring would not be easy and that she would need courage and strength to overcome the obstacles that lay in her path. Undeterred, Uduak set forth on her journey to find the sacred spring. She battled fierce storms and treacherous terrain, never once losing sight of her goal. And finally, after many days of travel, she reached the heart of the forest where the spring was said to lay. As she approached the spring, a feeling of peace and joy washed over her. She knelt by the crystal clear waters and whispered a heartfelt prayer, asking for guidance and assistance in bringing back the prosperity to her village. And then, to her amazement, the water began to glow with a soft golden light, and a voice spoke to her. Promising to grant her a wish if she proved herself worthy. Uduak knew she had to pass a series of tests in order to prove her worthiness, and so she faced each challenge with courage and determination, never once faltering in her resolve. She battled fierce beasts and overcame great obstacles. All the while, she kept her eyes on the prize that laid ahead. Finally, after passing all the tests, Uduak was granted the wisdom and power she needed to bring her prosperity to her village. She filled a sacred vessel with the water and from the spring and set out on her journey back to her home. When Uduak returned to the village, she was greeted with cries of joy and disbelief. The villagers could hardly believe their eyes as they watched Uduak pour the sacred water onto the barren land. And then, as if by magic, the land began to flourish once more. Crops sprouted from the earth, and the fields were filled with abundance and wealth. The village was saved from the brink of starvation, all thanks to the courage and the selflessness of one young girl named Uduak. The people rejoiced and praised her for her great deed, hailing her as a hero and a savior. But while Uduak basked in the adulation of the villagers, her stepsister watched from the shadows with envy and regret. She had chosen to follow her own selfish desires, hoarding her supplies and ignoring the sufferings of others. Nneka decided that she would go on her own adventure and return to the village with something even more impressive than what Uduak has done. Nneka set off on her journey with a heart full of greed and a mind filled with thoughts of glory and admiration. Along the way, she came across a mysterious man who promised her great riches and fame if she could pass a series of tests. She was marveled at, Nneka only thinking about herself and her greed. The riches that awaited her, agreed to take the challenge. The tests were not easy, and Nneka struggled forced to show kindness and humility and selflessness, the traits that were foreign to her selfish and arrogant nature. But Nneka was determined to prove herself and earn the riches that has been promised to her. However, as the test became more difficult, Nneka's true character began to show. She grew greedy and selfish, unwilling to help others. She failed each test miserably, and as a result, she returned to the village with scars on her body from the trials she had faced. Nneka arrived back into the village. She expected to be greeted with cheers and applause, just like her sister had been, but instead, the villagers laughed and mocked at her for her selfishness and greed. They saw through her facade and knew that she had only embarked on the journey for her own selfish gain. Uduak has been watching from afar, approaching her stepsister with a look of disappointment in her eyes. Nneka, I had hoped that you had changed, but you have seen the error of your ways. But it seems that you are still the same selfish, arrogant person that you have always been. As Nneka looked upon Uduak, Nneka hung her head in shame, realizing that she had let her jealousy and greed cloud her judgment. She had failed not only the test set before her, but also she failed herself, and she has also failed her sister. The villagers who had once revered her now saw her for who she truly was, a selfish and arrogant girl who cared only for herself. In the days that followed, Nneka's mother took her away to a lonely village far from home, and the villagers that once praised her, there Nneka was forced to reflect on her actions and the consequences of her selfishness, to realize that true happiness and fulfillment could not be found in greed or envy, but in the kindness and the selflessness. Nneka spent her days in isolation, learning to be humble and compassionate towards others. She worked tirelessly to help those in need, not for praise or admiration, but out of a genuine love and care for her fellow man. And so, Nneka's journey of self-discovery and redemption began. She vowed to change her ways and become the person she had always longed to be, kind, generous, and selfless like her sister Uduak. And although it will be a long and difficult journey, Nneka knew that determination and perseverance should overcome her selfishness and arrogance and become a better person. Nneka was proud of her growth. She realized that the true wealth and prosperity came not from greed and selfishness, but from kindness, selflessness, and compassion. And so she vowed to change her ways and follow in the footsteps of her sister Uduak, always putting the needs of others before her own. And so, the village of Embark flourished once more, filled with abundance and wealth, and the people live in peace and prosperity, all thanks to the great character of a selfless deeds of a young girl named Uduak.